What's going on, everyone? Got another box breakdown for you guys. This is box breakdown number 18. I'm gonna go over everything inside and how you all should use them so you guys can, catch some fish, because that's exactly what everybody who's watching this video wants to do. Inside of your box, you're gonna have all your lures and you're gonna have your value card that's gonna tell you everything inside. With the value inside of this month, we have a $60 value. I always like to start things off with the 4 hard baits, because these 4 hard baits are all fished the exact same way. The only difference between them is when I'm gonna be using them. So inside you have your zoomies, you have your sunburst, you have your chug jug, and you have your glowing minnow. These 4 baits right here, they all are fished the same way, but they have a different purpose. We're gonna start things off with the zoomies. You're gonna cast it out there and you're gonna reel it in. Zoomies is the biggest hard bait inside of your box. Now I'm gonna use this if I see a lot of bigger baits. The whole thing with fishing is you wanna match the hatch, meaning if you see baits that are real small, you're gonna wanna use a smaller bait. If you see baits that are much bigger, you're gonna wanna use a bigger bait. So zoomies right here, I'm gonna use is if I see bigger baits, that's when I'm gonna wanna use the zoomies. Now, glowing minnow is not very far behind in terms of the size. The glowing minnow I'm gonna use if I'm not seeing much bait. Just because I'm not seeing them, that just might mean they're a lot deeper. And this glowing minnow is a metal bait. It's a lipless crankbait, it's metal, it's gonna get you a lot deeper in the water column where those fish might be, where that bait might be. So if I'm not seeing much bait, that doesn't mean there's no fish around. This is gonna get you a little bit deeper in the water column, which might be the difference maker. Also, this bait does glow in the dark, which is cool. I'm telling you, give it a try. Bass fishing at night is extremely rewarding. Now you've got your sunburst right here, and you have your chug jug. Both of these baits are really small. We're still here in the winter, so sometimes the bass are keyed in on just little baits. They might not be looking for that big old shad right now or big bluegill. They might want some smaller baits. So I put these 2 in here, 2 different color options. If you guys are seeing smaller bait fish in the area, tie on the chug bug or tie on the sunburst. Like I mentioned, all of them are fished the exact same way. You're gonna cast it out there and you're gonna reel it in at a steady retrieve. You just wanna feel your rod tip vibrating. That's when you know that bait is down there shaking and putting out that vibration that the bass like. Now we're gonna move into the Z-Man baits inside of your box. You've got your micro finesse jig right here. There's actually 2 in this pack, and you have your finesse TRD, which is actually gonna pair with the jig. And I'm gonna show you guys how to do that right now. This micro finesse jig might be one of my favorite baits that we've put inside of the box. This little guy, oh my God, the bass just love it. So here you have your finesse jig, and here you have your finesse TRD. So what you're gonna wanna do is just line it up first. You're gonna see that it doesn't come very far out. So the first thing I like to do is just kind of pull this weed guard back so we can get the hook a little bit more exposed. And we're just gonna feed this right into the center of the bait, just like this. It's not gonna go in very far because this is a very small hook, hence the finesse jig, but just like that. Let the skirt fall back down. Push these weed guards back so keep that hook nice and free of weeds. And just like that, you have your micro finesse jig. And this little thing's just gonna be bouncing on the bottom, and that little tail is gonna be wiggling. It's gonna be digging down there. This little bait is an absolute weapon inside of the box. All right, now how am I gonna fish this? Where am I gonna fish it? I'm gonna fish it anywhere, first of all, but I'm gonna fish this bait anywhere. Unlike the hard baits where you gotta fish it in open water, this bait you can fish in open water, but you can also fish it in and amongst the weeds. It's got a weed guard on there, so you're not gonna be picking up all those weeds. But here we go. How am I gonna fish it? I'm gonna throw it out there and I'm gonna let it fall all the way down to the bottom. You can feel it hit the bottom. If you're using braid, just by holding the line just like this, you'll kind of feel it falling, and all of a sudden you'll just feel a little doom. That's it, just setting on the bottom, and your line's gonna completely stop moving. Now there's a couple ways I like to fish this, primarily just 2 ways. One is just a super slow crawl along the bottom. That is literally it, a super slow crawl along the bottom. Sometimes I will stop it, but most of the times I will just slow crawl it. And this thing's just gonna be dragging through the mud, it's gonna be dragging over rocks, it's gonna be dragging through weeds, wherever you might be fishing, and the bass will just swim by and pick it up. The other way I like to do it is throw it out there, let it fall, let it hit the bottom, give it a second. Sometimes, depending on how deep you're fishing, but right here is probably about 8 feet. I'm gonna let it fall, I'm gonna let it hit the bottom, and it's just gonna be a little pop, just like that. Pop, pop, let it pluck up off the bottom and fall back down, reel my slack in, pop, pop, reel my slack in, let it fall down, pop, pop, and you're just gonna wait and just feel a little and let that line start moving. You're gonna reel down and set the hook into them. Now, it's a finesse jig, so this jig, the hook can bend out on it, so you gotta finesse them in. Another way to do it, my last and final way, I guess there is 3 ways, is I'll be flipping it into weeds or lilies or something, let it fall in between it, just pull it up, let it fall back down there, pull it up, let it fall back down there, pop it. That little worm in the back, the little trailer is just gonna be wiggling, and this thing's gonna be sitting pretty much straight down, completely straight down with that worm just sitting up. So as you pull it, that tail is just gonna be wiggling. Definitely tie this thing on and give it a try. So last but not least, you got your Bruiser Baits stick worm, and you have the Lunker Hunt 4.0s to pair up with it. Now to rig this bad boy up, you're just gonna take your hook, you're gonna take your worm. All you're gonna do is take that hook point, go in the center of the top of the worm, push it down until it starts to make that turn on the bend, pull that puppy out, feed that worm up into this little hook slot right here, and you're gonna twist it simultaneously. Get it up over the eye of the hook, measure it out, see where it's gonna pop out. It's gonna be right about here. Take it, push it down in there. And actually, these Bruiser Bait stick worms have a little slot right there on the top of your hook where that hook is gonna sit. Once that bass bites it, boom, that hook gets exposed and you drive it into them. There you guys have it. Perfectly rigged stick worm. Now the stick worm is, a world famous bass bait. It's just a worm, but the bass seem to just absolutely love it. So how am I gonna use it? Sling her out there. Let her fall down to the desired depth. I typically let it fall down all the way to the bottom. This is obviously gonna take a little bit longer because it's just fluttering down just like this. Once it does hit the bottom, I'm just popping it or just twitching it just like that. The worm's gonna dart side to side and then slowly fall back down. On that slow fall back down, I'll reel my slack in and pop it again, let it fall back down. The stick worm really does it for itself. It really does. You kind of just cast it out there, and as it's falling down, you can get bit because it's just going down nice and easily. I mean, there's been so many times where I see bass in clear water, I'll throw a stick worm at it, and literally as the bait's just falling, I'm not even doing anything to it, they'll just swim over and just ever so gracefully just eat it. But yeah, the stick worm, very good bait. That's gonna complete the box breakdown number 18. If y'all have any questions, let me know down below in the comment section. I wish you all the best of luck. Get out there, keep casting, fish with confidence, and like always, happy fishing.